Great. This brings us to our last episode on beginner intro to music history. And we're going to finish off with the 20th century. So this is the century that all your parents and grandparents and probably even grandparents, great-grandparents, were alive during or born in. So this basically spans from 1900 to 2000, just about 20 years ago. So, in music, the 20th century was a diverse era of new ideas that broke the rules of traditional music. Styles of music moved in many different directions. Impressionist composers like Debussy and Ravel wrote music that seems more vague and blurred than the Romantics. New, slightly dissonant chords were used, and like Impressionist paintings, much of their music describes an impression of nature. Composer Arnold Schoenberg devised a way to throw away all the old ideas of harmony by creating 12-tone music. All 12 tones of the chromatic scale were used equally, with no single pitch forming a key center. Some of the music of Stravinsky and others was written in a neoclassical style, or new classical. This was a return to the classical principles of balance and form, and to music that did not describe any scene or emotion. Composers have experimented with many ideas. Some music is based on the laws of chance. Some is drawn on a graph paper. Some lets the performer decide when or what to play, and some is combined with electronic or other sounds. Popular music, like jazz, country, folk, and rock and roll, has had a significant impact on 20th century life and has influenced great composers like Aaron Copland and Leonard Bernstein. And the new technology of composers and electronic instruments has had a major effect on the ways music is composed, performed, and recorded. Some classical composers that you may be familiar with in their work include Claude Debussy, who wrote Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun; Maurice Ravel, famous for Bolero; Igor Stravinsky, famous for The Rite of Spring; Sergei Prokofiev, famous for Peter and the Wolf; George Gershwin, famous for Rhapsody in Blue; Aaron Copland, famous for Appalachian Spring; and Leonard Bernstein, most famously known for West Side Story. In the world of art and literature, we had artists such as Pablo Picasso, Salvador Dali, Andy Warhol, as well as others. In the written world, we had Robert Frost, F. Scott Fitzgerald, John Steinbeck, Ernest Hemingway, George Orwell, J.R.R. Tolkien, and Norman Mailer. Many of those authors are people that you have probably read or will read throughout high school. Some of the big events in the world include the first airplane flight by the Wright brothers in 1903, shortly thereafter, World War I, and the first radio program in 1920. The television was invented only 7 years later, before shortly thereafter World War II beginning in 1939. In 1957, man launched the first satellite into space, and in 1961, the Berlin Wall was built. In close succession after that, John F. Kennedy was assassinated. The Civil Rights March in Alabama happened in 1965. Neil Armstrong landed in the moon in 1969. In 1975, both the Vietnam War ends and personal computers become a thing. And then in 1989, the destruction of the Berlin Wall. And that takes us basically up until today. All further music history and music appreciation that we cover this year will be in a more in-depth look, and it will be a few years until we get to the 20th century in our history lessons in class. Hopefully you found these interesting and your interest has been piqued to learn more about the amazing world of music